All right, so today we're diving deep into the Sutra on the 8 realizations of the great beings.
Oh, a classic.
Yeah, and we're lucky enough to be working with Thich Nhat Hanh's translation and commentary on this one.
His work is really special. He had a way of bringing these ancient Buddhist ideas, into modern life.
So these 8 realizations, they're like signposts, guiding Buddhists, especially Bodhisattvas.
Right, on the path toward enlightenment.
And the very first one, it's a bit of a reality check. It says the world is impermanent,
Yeah, everything's always changing.
like constantly in flux.
It's easy to forget that when we're, trying to keep things stable and controlled in our daily lives.
Right, right.
But the sutra reminds us that change is the only constant. Even our bodies, which we think of as solid and lasting, are really just the 4 elements: earth, air, water, and fire. Always interacting, always transforming, like even at the molecular level.
It's like that saying, no man ever steps in the same river twice. The river's flowing, changing, and we are too.
Exactly. And Thich Nhat Hanh even points out that modern science kind of supports this ancient idea.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about how physicists talk about the universe. It's all interconnected energy and motion, right? And that lines up perfectly with the Buddhist view that reality is a process, not just a bunch of fixed things.
Wow, yeah, that's a really cool connection. But if everything's temporary, how do we ever find peace or stability?
That's where the real journey starts. The sutra suggests that understanding and accepting impermanence, that's what actually frees us from a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
Because, when we cling to things or resist change, we're basically fighting the natural order of things.
Like trying to hold on to a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the more slips away.
Exactly. So this first realization, it's like an invitation to loosen our grip and just go with the flow of life.
To find peace in the present moment, not by clinging to what's fleeting, but by appreciating the beauty of each moment as it changes.
Right.
This is all starting to connect for me. By acknowledging that nothing lasts forever, we actually find more peace and freedom.
It might seem counterintuitive at first.
Yeah, it does, but it makes a lot of sense.
And that actually leads us into the second realization, which is all about suffering. It says that the more desires we have, the more we suffer.
So even if we get what we want, we're still going to suffer. That doesn't seem fair.
It's not really about fairness. Think about it this way. Haven't you ever reached a goal, something you really wanted, and then the happiness just faded quickly?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then you're on to the next thing, the next desire. Like, it never ends.
I can definitely relate to that. It's like getting a new phone or something. You're excited for a week, and then it's just another thing.
Exactly. The sutra talks about 5 categories of desire that keep us on this treadmill of wanting: wealth, beauty, ambition, pleasure in eating, even laziness.
So it's not that those things are bad in themselves.
Not necessarily, no.
It's more about how attached we get to them.
Right. When our happiness depends on having them, that's when it becomes a problem.
So we're always chasing that next hit of pleasure or achievement, but never really feeling content.
It's like that hedonic treadmill you were talking about.
And the sutra says this endless chase is at the root of most of our suffering.
That's the idea.
But if desire is such a basic part of being human, how do we escape that cycle?
Well, that's where the third realization comes in. And it offers a pretty simple solution: being content with fewer possessions.
So minimalism,
It's definitely related.
like decluttering your house and simplifying your life.
Kind of, but it goes deeper than just material things. It's more about realizing that true happiness doesn't come from stuff. It comes from inner peace and contentment.
I like that idea, but how does having less stuff help us get there?
Thich Nhat Hanh believed that by reducing our wants and needs, we rely less on systems that exploit people and harm the environment.
I can see that. Like by consuming less, we're not contributing to that whole system of consumerism that's causing so much damage.
Right, and it's connected to ideas like simple living and ethical consumerism, which are pretty popular these days.
It's really interesting how this ancient wisdom is so relevant to issues we're facing today.
Definitely. And on a more personal level, simplifying our lives gives us more time and energy to focus on things that actually matter: relationships, our spiritual growth, and making a positive impact.
So it's not just about having less, it's about making space for what truly nourishes us.
That's a good way to put it. And it brings us to a really important point. Even with a simpler life and a mindful approach to desire, there's still another hurdle we need to overcome. And that's where the fourth realization comes in.
Okay, I'm ready for the next challenge. What is it?
It says that laziness is the enemy of spiritual progress.
Oh, okay. So it's not enough to just understand these ideas in our heads.
Right.
We actually have to like put in the work to live them.
Exactly. Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about how important diligence is.
Diligence, okay.
Yeah, for turning these realizations into something real, not just ideas.
Right, right.
He uses this great analogy of a gardener. You can't just scatter seeds and expect them to grow. You have to nurture them, give them the right conditions.
I like that. So what are the seeds we need to be tending to in our own spiritual practice?
He points to the Four Noble Truths and the Four Foundations of Mindfulness as essential.
Right. Those are fundamental in Buddhism.
Yeah.
I've heard of them, but to be honest, I could use a refresher on what they actually are.
Of course. So the Four Noble Truths are basically a framework for understanding suffering.
Okay.
It's like a diagnosis and a prescription for the human condition. The first Noble Truth is that suffering exists. The second is that it's caused by craving and attachment. The third is that it's possible to end suffering. And the fourth is that there's a path to do that, which is the Eightfold Path.
And that's like a set of guidelines for living a mindful and ethical life, right?
Exactly. It covers things like right understanding, right thought, right speech, all the way to right concentration. It's all about developing wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline.
Gotcha. And where do the four foundations of mindfulness fit in?
They're the practice,
Yeah.
the practical method for cultivating that right mindfulness from the Eightfold Path. It's all about paying close attention to our body, feelings, mind, and mental objects with this non-judgmental awareness.
So we're basically trying to be super aware of what's happening right now without getting caught up in judging everything.
Exactly. And through that practice, we start to see things more clearly. We see the impermanence, we loosen the grip of attachment, all that.
So it sounds like the Four Noble Truths give us the theoretical framework, and then the four foundations of mindfulness are the tools to put that into practice in our lives.
You got it. And the fourth realization, it's that reminder to be diligent in our practice, to really tend to those seeds of wisdom and mindfulness if we want them to grow.
Yeah, it's like anything else that takes effort,
Yeah.
You can't expect to just wake up enlightened, just like you can't run a marathon without training for it.
Exactly. And this brings us to the fifth realization, which focuses on another obstacle to enlightenment: ignorance.
What kind of ignorance are we talking about here? Just not knowing things.
It's a bit deeper than that. It's like a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality works. It's not seeing those truths that we've been talking about, the impermanence, the suffering caused by desire, the interconnectedness of everything.
So it's like we're living in this dream world attached to illusions that keep us trapped in suffering.
That's a good way to put it. And the sutra is really clear. The way out of ignorance is learning and understanding.
Makes sense. The more we understand ourselves and the world, the less we're going to get caught in those bad habits of thinking and acting.
Right. And Thich Nhat Hanh makes a really important point here. It's not just about our own liberation.
Okay.
When we overcome ignorance and develop wisdom, we can actually help others do the same.
So it's not just about individual enlightenment. It's about sharing that with the world.
Exactly.
That kind of leads us to the sixth realization, which seems to be all about helping others.
Yeah. This one brings in some social justice themes. It says that poverty breeds anger and hatred.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that. When people are struggling to just survive, it's easy to understand how that could lead to resentment and anger, even violence.
And the sutra's antidote to this is generosity.
Giving to others.
Yeah, it says that even if we don't have much ourselves, practicing generosity helps break that cycle.
So even a little bit can make a difference.
That's the idea. And Thich Nhat Hanh actually expands on this idea of generosity. He says it's not just about material things.
What else could it be?
He says it's any action that reduces suffering and creates a more just world.
That's a really beautiful way to think about it. So generosity could be volunteering, speaking out against injustice, even just being kind and respectful to everyone.
Exactly. He uses the example of Gandhi, whose whole life was dedicated to service and nonviolent resistance.
That's a powerful example of how one person's generosity can really make a difference.
And it shows that we can all be generous no matter how much we have. It's about that spirit of giving and recognizing our connection to everyone.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Impermanence, desire, diligence, ignorance, generosity. I'm seeing a theme here about facing the challenges of life with wisdom and compassion.
You're picking up on something really important, and it's something the seventh realization addresses beautifully. It uses the metaphor of the lotus flower.
Oh, I love that metaphor.
It says we can live in the world without being corrupted by it, just like a lotus flower growing in the mud.
That's such a vivid image. The lotus stays pure even though it comes from dirty water. How do we achieve that kind of resilience?
It's about inner strength and clarity. The sutra connects this to the six paramitas, or perfections.
I've heard of those. Are they like virtues?
Kind of. They're giving ethical conduct, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom.
So it's about staying true to our values even when things are tough.
Exactly. The world's always going to have challenges, but we have the power to choose how we respond. Like the lotus, we can rise above the mud, stay true to ourselves, even in the chaos.
It makes me think of that Viktor Frankl quote. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response.
That's a perfect connection.
And in our response lies our growth and our freedom.
That leads perfectly into the final realization, which brings everything together in a call to action.
Okay, I'm ready for the grand finale. What is it?
It says that we must be willing to help others, even when it's difficult.
So it's not just about reaching enlightenment ourselves. It's about actively working to help all beings find that freedom.
Exactly. It's about a deep commitment to the well-being of others, no matter what. Thich Nhat Hanh really emphasizes the dedication and resilience it takes to walk this path.
It sounds like we're talking about becoming bodhisattvas, those who dedicate their lives to helping others achieve enlightenment.
That's right. And he even offers some guidance for how to deal with the tough stuff that comes with this commitment. He shares 11 points from the Po Lin San Mi Lu about how to see challenges and adversity in a different light.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's about not seeing difficulties as setbacks, but as chances to grow, to learn, never giving up on that vow to help others.
It's amazing how he can reframe those tough experiences as like effective medicines and times of freedom and realization.
Right.
It's really powerful. Which of those 11 points speaks to you the most?
The one that really resonates with me is the idea that suffering is a universal experience. We all go through it, right? Everyone faces challenges, everyone experiences pain and loss.
Yeah, that's true.
And realizing that helps me be more empathetic and compassionate. It reminds me that my struggles aren't unique and that by helping others through theirs, I'm also helping myself.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
When we work to ease suffering for others, we create a more compassionate world for everyone, including ourselves.
Exactly. And that interconnectedness, that understanding that we're all in this together, that's really at the heart of the Bodhisattva path.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
Hmm.
Impermanence, desire, diligence, ignorance, generosity, compassion. It's amazing how relevant these ancient teachings still are today.
Yeah, and we've only scratched the surface, really. There's so much more to explore in Buddhist teachings, so many different interpretations and perspectives.
So what's the next step for our listeners who want to learn more?
I highly recommend checking out the full sutra on the 8 realizations of the great beings. It's easy to find online and in print.
Okay, and what about Thich Nhat Hanh?
Oh, definitely explore more of his work. His books and talks offer so much practical wisdom for applying these principles to everyday life.
Well, I think our listeners are walking away with a lot to think about, and hopefully a renewed sense of purpose, too.
I hope so.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one last thought. Challenges are a part of life. We can't avoid them. But they're also opportunities for growth, for transformation.
Don't shy away from them.
Embrace the challenges. Use them to fuel your own journey toward a more compassionate and meaningful life.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.